UI elements are sometimes useful for purposes other than creating a user interface. In this lesson, we are going to use UI elements to add a camera effect when a player goes underwater. I have my Scene 01 open. This scene has quite a bit of water. If I run the game, and then run into the water, there is nothing to make it feel as though I'm in the water. When I look up, I don't even see the water any longer. The water is on a plane which is only visible from one side. Of course, we don't really want to make it visible from the other side because that would feel as though we were under the water instead of in the water. A better approach may be to add a lens over the camera when we are in the water. Let's stop the game. Focus on the FPS controller, expand the FPS controller, and select the first-person character camera. The camera preview shows our view through that camera. Our goal is to add a lens over the camera that will provide an underwater feel to it. Click in the hierarchy window to deselect the camera. Right-click in the hierarchy and choose UI Panel. Again, by adding a UI element, a canvas and an event system are also created. I'll double-click the panel to select it and give it focus. In the inspector window, I'll change the color property to blue and adjust the alpha to get the desired amount of transparency. When I play the game now, I already have a bit of an underwater feel. We need this lens to turn on only when the player goes underwater. Back in the hierarchy, let's rename the panel to Water Lens. One of the challenges in programming is determining where to write code. We know the code needs to toggle the water lens on and off at the appropriate time. In object-oriented programming, a good way of deciding where the code should be written is to ask yourself, what object should have this behavior? In this case, what object should have the ability to turn on or off the lens? You could add this ability to the lens itself, or maybe to the camera, or the water, or the player. If I add a script to the water lens object, and the water lens object is toggled off, the script itself will also be turned off. So if we wanted to toggle on or off the water lens object, we probably would not want the script attached to that object. If we really wanted the script attached to the water lens, we could turn the lens on or off, not by deactivating it, but instead by changing the alpha. When we are above the water, the alpha could be set to 0, making the lens completely transparent. And when we go underwater, we could set the alpha back to the alpha level that achieves our desired effect. Taking this approach would open up the possibility of increasing the alpha the deeper the player goes into the water. For this lesson though, let's keep it simple. Let's attach the script to the first-person character camera, so the camera will have the ability to turn on and off the water lens. This will be convenient since the position of the camera determines whether the water lens should be visible or not. Let's select the first-person character camera. In the inspector, let's add a new script and name that Camera Behavior Create and Add. In the project window, in Assets, let's move the Camera Behavior script into the Scripts folder. Let's go into that folder and double-click the script to open it up. Remove the start method and the comments. We will only need the update method. Create a public property of type GameObject named Water. Making the property public will allow us to give the script access to the water without needing to use the GameObject.find method in code. Let's save this and look at the script in the inspector. We see the water property currently has no value. I'll drag the Water Pro Daytime object to set that property. So this works. However, we really do not need our script to have access to the entire Water Pro Daytime object. We really just need to have access to its position, which we know is part of the object's transform component. Let's bring the code back up and change the type of the water property to transform. Save again and go back to Unity. We see that value of the water property now shows type mismatch. That is logical. We had placed a game object here, but then changed the type to a transform. Drag the Water Pro Daytime to set the water property again. Notice it now shows the game object with the transform shown in parentheses. Unity is smart enough to know that you are adding the transform instead of the game object. Back to the code, let's create a public property of type GameObject to serve as a reference to the water lens. Save and return to Unity. Then drag the water lens panel to set the value of the water lens property. Remember, using public allows for setting values in the editor, so we no longer need to use the GameObject.find method in code to set values. Back in the code, we now have a script that is attached to our camera and has access to both the water lens panel as well as the transform of the water itself. In the update method, let's turn the water lens on or off depending on whether the camera is above or below the water. We just want to say if this dot get component of type transform followed by parentheses dot position dot y is less than water dot position dot y, then we will set the water lens to be active, and otherwise we will set the water lens to be inactive. The keyword this allows us to reference the object this script is attached to. So in this case, this refers to the camera. From the camera object, we are referencing the transform component, then the position property of the transform, which is of type vector3, and finally referencing the y value of the camera's position. The water property is already a transform, so we can immediately access the position and then the y value of the water's position. All we are saying is if the camera's y position is less than the water's y position, then we turn the water lens on. And if the camera is not under the water, we turn the lens off. Save this and return to Unity. When we play the game and run into the water lens is activated. And we feel a bit more as though we are under the water now. If I jump back out of the water lens is deactivated. Let's stop and go back and simplify the code a bit. We can replace the getComponent method with transform. While this does not work for other components, Unity provides this shortcut for referencing the transform component. I assume this is because referencing the transform is very common, and because every game object in Unity has a transform component. We can also remove the this keyword. You could leave it if it helps you remember that you are referring to the object the script is attached to, but it is not needed. The script has direct and implicit access to the components of the game object the script is attached to. There is much more you could do to improve the feeling of immersion with water. As mentioned before, you could have the lens become darker as you descend deeper into the water. You could also play a sound effect at the moment you enter or exit the water. You could turn the background music and ambiance down while you are underwater to make it feel more muffled. You could also add a texture to the water lens instead of a solid color, which may help blur everything you see while you're underwater. However, I hope the goal of this lesson was achieved. You have gained XP, that is gamer code for experience points. You have gained XP in using UI elements in creative ways. And you have also gained more XP in how to write code. If you are new to programming, I am sure this is a bit confusing. However, you are probably starting to see common elements in all the scripts that we write. Over time, you should be able to start modifying scripts and writing your own scripts of increasing difficulty.